What questions are you most likely to be asked during a graduate school admissions interview? Stick around and learn the top 10 today on this episode of Navigating Academia. What's up, everybody? My name is Dr. J. Phoenix Singh, and I want to warmly welcome you to this episode of Navigating Academia, your leading source for guidance on how to advance your career in academia. As always, I appreciate the love, so please do take a minute to like and share this video with your colleagues, with your friends, with your students. Subscribe to our channel, hit that bell to get notifications every time we post new content, and comment below. You can also follow us at these social media accounts. So congratulations, you've passed the first hurdle in the graduate school admissions process. You've gotten an interview. Congratulations, you should be very proud of yourself just for getting this far. But obviously, you want to ace it and get into your dream master's or doctoral program. And as they say, practice makes perfect. But what do you practice? Well, that's the point of this video today. That's what we're going to be talking about in this episode, which are the top 10 most commonly asked questions during the graduate school admissions interview process. And this is according to different surveys of faculty members, as well as graduate students, current graduate students themselves. Now, I've been sure to word these questions in such a way, to the extent possible, to make them relevant to just about any doctoral or master's program. The only limitation is that one of the questions does ask you a little bit about research. And so because of that, if you're in a field where maybe the term research isn't used so much, then it's something where you can feel free to just skip past that one. But do stick around for all 10 to be able to get a comprehensive sense of different questions that you want to make sure you have answers to. And I'm going to make a video, which is going to be, I'm going to link it in the description below for you, that is going to be a sample, like a practice interview, where I'm going to ask you the questions, and then I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to provide an answer, so that this way you can actually go through and practice giving answers to questions like these, as well as others that have been identified as those which you should really be prepared to answer. But let's jump right into question one. Okay, so question number one is, tell us a little bit about yourself. This is kind of the big opener. It's something where it's almost like when you're writing an essay and you're going to give some kind of a thesis statement. You want to make sure that for all of these questions, your answer is nice and compact. Like I mentioned a second ago, right? So 30 seconds or less, try to fit things into 3 sentences. Now, obviously, a lot of these questions could have answers that could go on and on and on for several minutes at a time. You want to make it something where you keep it nice and compact, and if you're not sure whether you should keep going, there's nothing wrong with using the phrase, should I go on? Right? Or would you like to hear more? Okay, that's a lot better than going on for 5 more minutes and, you know, your interviewer's eyes are rolling into the back of their heads, right? Or it could be something where, you know, you keep it nice and tight and you're just assuming that the interviewer, if they're interested in learning more, they will ask a follow-up question. Something like, you know, you do your 3 sentences and then the interviewer notices that you're done and says, well, the last thing you said there was very interesting. You know, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Terrific. Have them be the ones to ask, okay? It's obviously a fine line between saying too much and saying too little, but it's always good to err on the side of not saying too much, because surely they're going to have a variety of questions for you, and whatever points you really want to make, you'll probably be able to make them down the line. So this is kind of the broadest question you're going to get. There's no right or wrong answer. To tell us a little, well, let me preface this. There's definitely wrong answers, but maybe there's no perfect or right answer about telling you a little bit about yourself. Because there's obviously so many ways you could approach answering this question. You could talk about, it depends what kind of program you're going into. So for me, my background is I've got 2 doctorates, one in psychiatry and one in clinical psychology. You know, in those programs, I may want to talk about how, you know, my name is Jay Singh. I grew up in Great Falls, Virginia, so part of Northern Virginia, which is where my folks still are. You could take that very personal approach, or you could just jump right into like the field and all. So, tell us a little bit about yourself and just say, well, I'm very passionate about pursuing the field of clinical psychology as an undergraduate. It's almost like jumping right off the bat into that. So again, there's a variety of different strategies that you could take. I'd love to say that there's one that's better than the other, but realistically, depending on who your interviewers are, the kind of program you're going for, etc., it's really going to vary. So I can give you kind of the generic guidance. Don't be self-deprecating, say negative things about yourself, etc., but also don't be pompous and over the top. Everything in moderation, right? But that's question number one. Question number two is, why do you think that you're a good fit for the program? This is something you're going to be asked in some way, shape, or form. This one, really what the interviewers are looking for is making sure that you actually know a lot about their program, and you've really thought about what it is that provides a goodness of fit between you and your background and your goals and the faculty members and resources that departmental program has. If you're not ready to answer this question, you should not be accepting this interview in the first place. Realistically, you should only be applying to graduate school places that you would go, and you should have done just an incredible amount of background research before you pull the trigger and submit that application. I would be surprised if this isn't already answered, this question isn't already answered in your application essay. I'd be surprised you even get the interview, to be frank. So you should already have pretty clear answers to this. But making sure that you have prepped before the interview, reminded yourself all about their program, who are the current faculty members, who's teaching what classes, what does their research look like, and how does it fit in with you and your goals. Make sure you do that. Super important. That's question two. Question three is something that's going to be incredibly important, which is, what are your research interests? Remember I mentioned that one of the questions would be about research? This is the one. So what are your research interests? Obviously, especially if you're going for a PhD program, which is a research degree, virtually always, you're doing your doctoral dissertation and these things. Less relevant if you're doing, let's say, a JD or an MD, or you're doing a PsyD, etc. There's a lot of different degree programs out there, obviously. But what are your research interests can be very important if you're doing a research degree. And one of the critical things here is that usually, folks, one of the biggest mistakes that I see people making is that they don't get specific enough. So I say, what are your research interests, like in psychology? And they'd be like, depression. And I'll be like, that's not an answer. No, you need to be real specific. Right? So it's like, a phenomenon, a population, and a methodology are the three things to mention. I'm interested in looking at callous unemotional traits in adolescent boys using factor analytic techniques and the ICU, the inventory of callous unemotionality, whatever it is, some measure, okay? So be really specific like that, and make sure that when you communicate it, it's in such a way that it's, again, pointing to the goodness of fit. That's the population I'm interested in working with, and Dr. Smith is really one of the leading experts in the field, and working with him is something that would really be kind of a dream for me. Fantastic, but be real specific in the research interests. Even if you have tentative ideas for what your study or studies would be, fantastic. Make sure, though, that whatever you're proposing is doable. You don't want to say, I want to do an international study in such and such, where I'm interviewing hundreds of people and da-da-da. It's not realistic. Make sure that whatever you're proposing is realistic to get done in the span of time that the master's or the doctoral degree is, right? You just have to make sure of that. Otherwise, I'm going to think, if I'm one of your interviewers, that essentially you really haven't thought this through, or you don't know what you're talking about when it comes to research. You're really naive, and that's not a good thing to come across as. Especially if I'm your potential supervisor and I'm doing an interview, not a good look. Okay, so be real specific and be realistic. Question number 4 is, what do you see as the major trends in the field? This is really pointing to, okay, now we've established that you know what you're talking about in terms of your research area, but do you understand the big picture? Do you understand what's going on in the field in general? This will point to maybe, you know scholars and you know research trends and all from 20 years ago. I remember in clinical psych and all, people coming and talking about, I'm a big Freudian guy and, I really like defense mechanisms and this kind of stuff. And I'm like, this was like, 100 years ago almost. Yeah, it doesn't really, I don't know what the heck we're talking about, for these sorts of things. I want you to talk about, contemporary psychodynamic theory and dialectical behavior therapy and the research that's happening in University of Washington with Marshall Linehan, da-da-da-da-da-da. I want you to talk about this kind of work. What's happening now in whatever the phenomenon, the population, and the statistical analytic technique. What's happening right now? That's what I want to know. And the best way to do this is also taking a look at maybe, especially if you already know who your interviewers are, make sure you take a look at their research and find out what it is, what are the trends they're following. Because if you can set that up and talk about it, they're going to be way more impressed. I can just tell you that right now. Because anything that seems personal to them, they're going to respond more positively to it. It's just the nature of the beast. It's human psychology. So if you can do that, and if you can't, you don't know who the interviewers are going to be, take the time, it'll be a big pain in the butt, and try to do background research on all the faculty members in the department to be able to get a sense of, what they're focused on, especially the ones that have a good fit with you, because the likelihood is higher that there'll be at least one or two of the interviewers there. Question number 5 is, tell us about your most significant accomplishment. This should be something that is in some way, shape, or form related to your probable success in their program. You shouldn't say something like, I'm really, my biggest accomplishment is coming in first in a triathlon in my sophomore year of college. I mean, that's great. Congratulations. Nobody cares. Right? This is something where your most significant accomplishment should be something that feeds into, again, your likely success. So, for example, I could say something like, I would say that my most significant accomplishment so far has been working on a peer-reviewed publication on behavioral genetics with Professor George Scarlett, who's in my department back at such and such university. It was really an experience that opened my eyes to the peer-reviewed publishing process, and it's something that I'm really looking forward to learning more about in graduate school, specifically publishing in, journals such as X and Y, which, Professor X, who's my hopeful supervisor, just published in. So the goodness of it just couldn't be better. Fantastic. That's great. If it's a doctoral program, especially, with a research doctoral program, you're going to want to make sure that, you know about peer-reviewed publications, etc. This is great. It's such an important thing. And what I would say is that this relates to our next question, which we'll get to right now. Question number 6, what are your long-term career goals? Match up whatever your best accomplishment is with whatever your long-term career goals are. And these long-term career goals really need to be suited to the program. Remember that, especially if you're going into a research doctoral program, that you never say something, let's say that it's something that has a clinical bent, like clinical psychology, where, you're going to be able to be a clinician afterwards. Fantastic, right? But, if I'm a professor of clinical psychology, the last thing I want to hear from you is that you want to go and be a full-time clinician. Because why the heck would I want to train you in, clinical work, but also in research for years and years, have you in my lab, teach you everything that I know, and then you'd never want to do any research? It's not a good fit. You should go and get a PsyD program or an LCSW or an MA in counseling. You should not be doing this program. So the long-term career goals, don't just say exactly, like unrehearsed, exactly what your long-term career goals are. I want you to make sure that what they are and how you communicate them has a good fit. So for example, I could say something like in that program, which is both clinical and research in nature, I could say something like, I really value the idea of being a scientist practitioner, using that kind of a model, and essentially being able to do clinical work so as to inform my research. I'm interested in academia, if nothing else in an adjunct position, but hopefully in exploring that as, at least the linchpin of my career, and then also doing clinical work on the side. Even if it's something where you want to be a full-time clinician and all, If you want to get into that program, which frankly I wouldn't recommend if that's really what you want, is only do clinical work, you have to make sure that you're doing a good job in the interview of providing a goodness of fit within the framework that program is hoping that you provide. Question number 7 is a timeless favorite. What are your biggest strengths and weaknesses? The last thing you want to do is do the whole week. I mean, the strength, it can be whatever. Just pick another goodness of fit. But for the weakness, please don't say something like, I work too hard and, my work-life balance is off. Oh my God. If you can come up with a genuine weakness, don't say something like, my weakness is that, I'm really bad with computers. In this day and age, that's a really bad thing to say. You don't want to embarrass yourself too much, right? But, you could say something along the lines of, I would say that one of my big weaknesses right now is focusing more on my family. And this is why at least once a week right now, I have a call with my parents to be able to stay in touch with them, because I really believe that one of the cornerstones of the graduate experience is being deeply involved and deeply passionate about my research project. But a key thing to succeeding is, I recognize, also protective factors like having a really strong social support system. So that's something that I've been focused on recently, and it's been incredibly fulfilling. Fine. That's an answer. There's so many things that you could say. If you're not sure whether your weaknesses are good or not, post it below, right? And let's all be really constructive in terms of how we respond to it. Okay, question 8. There's always going to be a dumb question like this. Okay, and it's going to go something like this. If you could have dinner with anyone, living or dead, who would it be and why? There's going to be something, if you were stuck in a blender and you were, like 1 inch tall or whatever, how would you escape? Name me 10 uses for a pencil other than writing. There's all this kind of stuff, right? I had one guy once, he said, what are 10 uses for a pencil? And all of them were violent. Right, one of them is like, it's like, self-defense. I could stab somebody. I can do all these things. I'm like, whoa, so be smart about how you answer these things. But there will usually be some really weird question like this. This is the one that I'm recommending. If you could have dinner with anybody, living or dead, who would it be and why? Try to say something interesting and nothing that could really turn people off. So just one to think about. Question number 9 is going to come towards the very end, and it is, what else should we know about you? And make sure you have something prepared for this. Don't say something like, I don't know, I think that's pretty much it. No, you're somebody who has so much to offer, and you want to really make sure that, again, when you're asked this question, you don't go on too long, 30 seconds or less, right? But if there's anything over the course of the interview that you didn't have a chance to say, that you prepped, go ahead and say it if you think it's appropriate. And finally, question number 10, the age-old question, what questions do you have for us? Is what the interviewer will ask. Make sure you have questions prepared. At least have 3. And don't make it something where you're interviewing them. Don't be like, why did you accept a faculty position in this department? Oh, that's a terrible question. Don't ask that, right? Oh my gosh. You can say something about, what is your favorite part about living in Minneapolis? If you're going to be in Twin Cities in the U.S., for example. There's so many questions that you could ask here and all. Don't say anything about your least favorite. Don't have them speak about anything negative. Always positive. Okay? Don't ask any personal questions or anything like this unless it's related to you. Let's say you have kids. You can say something like, one of the reasons that I really love the idea of being at the University of Minnesota is that Twin Cities really just has a phenomenal set of school systems, which I'm really looking forward to for the kids. Can I ask, in terms of family life and all, what are kind of the best parts about raising a family here in Twin Cities? That's appropriate if you already have kids and a spouse and these things. It's less appropriate if you don't, and you're just like, what are the best? So, Dr. Smith, I know you have kids. What's your favorite part about having kids here? Inappropriate. Don't be overly familiar. That's not a good thing. You don't really know these folks, okay? And you really want to come across well. So that's question number 10. Like I said, have at least 3 prepared, and which ones you ask, make sure that, you really pick which ones during the interview itself. Maybe you'll come up with some new ones, during the interview that you can ask at this point. But that's question 10. Alright y'all, thank you so much for watching. I want to hear from you in the comments below. Which of the questions that I proposed today, if any, are you most nervous about answering? And maybe you're already done with the application process and you've already gotten in. If so, congratulations. Maybe you can share the questions that you were asked during your graduate school application interview process with all of us, and especially if there are any weird ones. It's always kind of fun. And per usual, if you have any questions that we can answer in future episodes of Navigating Academia, please do post them down in the comments below, because this is why we're here, is to be able to help each other out. Don't forget to like and share this video with your friends, with your colleagues and students, subscribe to our channel, and follow us on social media. If you're interested in one-on-one career coaching, such that we can get you up to speed and give you the best chance, maximize your likelihood of getting into your dream master's or doctoral program, please don't hesitate to schedule a 1-hour consultation call with me via the website below. Alright everybody, I'm signing off. Have a great day, and remember to get out there, take chances, and be your best self. Thank you so much for stopping by, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here as always. If you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more in this series on navigating academia, please click on one of these links over here to be able to view more original content. I hope to see you there.